how encouraging was it to end practice with the way you did that touchdown?
Well, look, it was more encouraging than the way the 2-minute drill started. We had penalty. We're working through some of that, and I've said this repeatedly. There kind of ebbs and flows to some of these drills.
Ebbs and flows indeed. The Broncos on Saturday finished their 6th straight training camp practice, pushing them through the midway point of a training camp heading into the 2023 season. Hello, my name is Nick Kosmider, and you're listening to the Not Another Bucking podcast. I'm the beat writer covering the Broncos at The Athletic. And thank you, everybody, for listening, for subscribing, for whether it's on YouTube, listening on Spotify, Apple, or wherever else you get your podcasts. We really appreciate everybody who's kind of come along for this ride. Today, what we're going to do is talk about where the Broncos are, right? So they had just finished off, like I said, their 6th practice in a row. They're 8th in the last 9 days as they take a day off here Sunday and get ready to start preparing for their first preseason game next Friday in Arizona against the Cardinals. And the theme, I think, going into Saturday's practice after Friday was avoiding some of the pre-snap penalties that have become a little bit of an issue for the Broncos offense in this camp. Obviously, Sean Payton came into this offseason program making that a large priority. You all know the things that he said to USA Today about the former staff. He mentioned in there that the Broncos were among the league leaders in pre-snap penalties on both sides of the football. They were tied for 5th on offense. They were tied for 3rd on defense. And so clearly that is something when he watched the film from 2022 that frustrated him quite a bit. And so it has become an emphasis. And he said Friday, not only is it an emphasis, it's got to be more than that. And if it keeps showing up for a player, that player will be benched. Now, is he going to bench his $87 million right tackle? Is he going to bench his Pro Bowl left tackle? Maybe not. There's probably a sliding scale to this. But if you're somebody that's trying to make the team, that will be a pretty good way to kind of hurt your stock if you continue to do this. And it emanated from Friday's 2-minute drill. The Broncos, it was the first time in this camp that they went to the 2-minute hurry up situation, practicing that at the end of their session. And it was a disaster. The Broncos in that session with the first team offense had back-to-back false start penalties, giving them a first and 20. And after a short pass on 1st and forever, Russell Wilson had a pass on 2nd and long that was tipped at the line of scrimmage, intercepted by Randy Gregory, and returned for a touchdown. Fast forward to Saturday, the Broncos first team offense gets out there again. First play is a holding call. Now, not a pre-snap penalty, but certainly once again, not putting your best foot forward in this critical 2-minute drill. After the holding penalty comes a false start, another pre-snap penalty. So now the Broncos are facing a 1st and 25 from their own 10-yard line. You put yourself in that situation, you're done. The statistical oddities, the statistical chances of you being able to overcome that situation, especially in a 2-minute deal, are super rare. So that was a frustration for Sean Payton when he came off the field. Again, the Broncos are for the 3rd offseason in a row implementing a new offense. There's new lingo. Sean Payton's offense is complicated in terms of its play calls, of its various alignments and things like that. And it is certainly a learning curve for a lot of these young players and veterans alike, who haven't had a taste of this before. So some of this is to be expected, right? He also brought in officials and essentially said to them, look, I want you to call this razor close. We need to know if we're even close to some of these penalties. And so I think you have that with that sort of green light from the coach. I think you had some officials over these last 2 practices who were certainly, I think, being more than willing to throw some of these penalties. And so again, it was a situation where they were trying to get the big picture of what this is going to look like, of the root causes that can cause some of these penalties. And so it'll be very interesting going into Monday, these final 3 or 4 practices before the Broncos play this game. What the staff was able to pull out of that film review of these last 2 days, and really kind of put to the team and say, hey, these are why some of these penalties are popping up. Let's find a way to nip these in the bud this week, so that we can play a clean game on Friday night in Arizona. With all that being said, there were certainly positives to come out of the last 2 days of practice. Russell Wilson's best 2 days of camp so far. And there has been in and around Denver a lot of sort of sky is falling commentary when it comes to the offense through the first 4 or 5 practices, whatever it might have been. And even though we've been here before in terms of offensive change of implementing new schemes and sort of the time that takes. We knew going into this camp that the Broncos offense was going to be going up against a defense that was benefiting from a lot of schematic carryover in terms of Vance Joseph coming in and running a lot of the same stuff that Ejiro Evero did in 2022. Also the veteran carryover, so many guys on this defense who have been playing together for several seasons now. We knew it would be concerning if that group wasn't well ahead of what the offense was doing. And so that has been the case. That was the case through the first 5-6 full practices or so. And it's not as if the offense was just couldn't ever move the ball. It wasn't. Now, Russell Wilson had one stretch last week where he threw picks on back-to-back days to open the first team period. But it's not as if he was out here just throwing interception after interception or missing targets, up, down, left, right. It wasn't super smooth. But again, it wasn't this just unmitigated disaster that I think in some ways it had been portrayed to be out here at camp. But the last 2 days, I think, offered some real encouragement in terms of, okay, this is what happens. You start to come up to speed a little bit. And some of the mistakes that were getting made based on unfamiliarity with scheme, with various things like that, are starting to be, sort of addressed. And that looked most prominent for Russell Wilson in Saturday's practice. Very crisp from the start of the first 7-on-7s through the multiple full team drills that we saw. Just a greater confidence in what they were doing, getting the ball out quickly. And it was all highlighted in that second 2-minute drill on Saturday. Obviously, we addressed the first one that included the hold and the false start. On the second one, the Broncos began at their own 41-yard line with about a minute and a half left on the clock and 2 timeouts, needing to score a touchdown. Russell Wilson hits a couple quick passes that get them a first down. Then they have a run or a play that doesn't get out of bounds. So they're behind the clock a little bit. Ultimately, they are facing a 1st and 10 at the opponent 47-yard line. They're now down to less than 30 seconds on the clock. Russell Wilson takes the snap, looks to his right where he sees Jerry Jeudy get a step on cornerback Damari Mathis, and just lets go one of these classic Russell Wilson moon balls that is perfectly on target. Jerry Jeudy sort of slides into the end zone, getting the ball where only he could catch it. Hauls it in for a 47-yard touchdown, much to the delight of the crowd that was still there on the hill watching the end of practice. It was just sort of the best pass of training camp for Russell Wilson, but also just sort of a good exclamation point on what was a much improved final 2 days for that offense. So again, I think if you're a Broncos fan, you're encouraged by the way that this is progressing. Obviously, if your concern over Russell Wilson is simply that he put together the worst season of his career a year ago, that there were a lot of things footwork-wise, health-wise, different things like that sort of torpedoed that season for he and the Broncos, I think all of that is very valid. Having just concerns based on whether some of that is going to linger is fair. But if you put training camp in a vacuum and look and isolate just that, for Russell Wilson, I think has been a normal progression that you would expect in this sort of first-time scheme with Sean Payton, a coach who, again, demanding of the details, wants everything to look perfect, and sort of the push for perfection takes some time. But I think what has stood out to me about Russell Wilson is the way that he has interacted with his teammates in this camp, who have just had a lot to say about sort of his mindset, is a word that you keep hearing. So let's listen to what a couple of teammates, Kendall Hinton and Cortland Sutton, have had to say about Russell Wilson in this camp.
What's just impressed you most about Russ this offseason? Obviously, to end a 6-day stretch the way that he did right here was great. But what's impressed you as you guys have started to continue to gain more ground offensively?
He's been so determined this offseason and going to camp. He's been I think great this offseason, just connecting with guys and being in a great mind space. And I'm ready to see what he's going to let loose this season.
See Russ out there in a different light and seeing him, you guys have seen him. He looks amazing, from, the outside appearance, but then just talking to him and, where his headspace is and, where he is, trying to get to. It's amazing to, see him in that light and knowing that, he has a chip on his shoulder because he knows that, he didn't, put out what he wanted to put out last year. And we all, everyone knows who Russ is and the things that he's done. And last year wasn't, obviously what we wanted to see. And, I know that knowing him, it wasn't what he wanted to put out there. And so to see him, show up, looking the way he did and, having the mindset that he had, it's very encouraging. It's very, I don't know, it's one of those things that, everyone is rallying behind him and ready to go to work.
And like we said, this defense is giving Russell Wilson headaches on most days, right? He's learning this new offense, going against a defensive unit that has all that continuity that we talked about. But it also has a new piece that has been just really excellent through these first 8 full practices, and that's Zach Allen, the defensive end that the Broncos signed in free agency to a 3-year, $45 million deal. He has been every bit as good as advertised as an ascending player who can be disruptive in the backfield in multiple ways. That has been the case with Zach Allen. You see the size. I think that is one thing that has struck me about Zach Allen. You can read what a guy is listed at on a stat sheet, but when you see him on the field, it's really different. He has this just massive upper body, very long wingspan. He is able to be fluid in playing multiple positions on that defensive line. I think Vance Joseph is obviously well-versed in knowing how to use him within different fronts, having coached him the last 4 years in Arizona. And I think it's just going to give this Broncos defensive line opportunities to do a lot of different things, to create some gap leverages that I think give them a chance to blitz in creative ways. We've already seen some of that through training camp. And I looked at practice the other day for all kind of the look. We're talking about Russell Wilson bouncing back. The number one concern for this defense is whether it can apply constant pressure to the quarterback. There was early in training camp. I think the first practice you look over during a play in 11-on-11s, and you see the guys on the field. It's Randy Gregory, it's DJ Jones, Zach Allen, and Frank Clark, and that's not going to be the front four for every single play. But you say, man, that is some pretty good top end talent. And if that is a group that can stay healthy, now again, that has been a moving target, especially for a guy like Randy Gregory throughout his career. Frank Clark, obviously at 30 years old, has had some issues. He's missed a couple days of camp for various things, though he should be back in practice on Monday. But again, I think you're starting to see some of the depth that the Broncos are going to be counting on, come up in practice. Guys like Jonathan Harris, Matt Henningsen have started to play really well, and they're going to need those guys, especially after Eni Uwazurike gets suspended for gambling, the second-year player who I think they thought could play a role on this defense. You have other guys now starting to come up and fill those spots. But again, Zach Allen, when you're talking about that front, he's been impressive, and we'll let Quinn Miners, who has had the, I guess, fortune for his preparation, misfortune for how it looks every day in practice, of going against Zach Allen.
Yeah, Zach has definitely, he used, when JJ was in Arizona, Zach definitely learned a little bit from him. The way he lines up, and sometimes will play backside into things. You really got to play him true. He practices hard every single day, it's really fun to go against him every single day. And continue to get better.
And of course, the other part of this defense that continues to stand out is the secondary. Now, I tweeted this the other day, or I X'd it, I guess. I posted an X. There's just no good way to say that. Like, I X'd it. I posted an X. Yeah, either way, it's just awkward. We don't get to just say tweeted anymore, although I think people will just continue to say that. Anyway, so I put out this post the other day about Pat Surtain, where I said, I think people don't still fully grasp just how good this guy is. He was the 9th overall pick in the 2021 draft. And from the very moment that he got to Denver and he's in his first, mini camp and playing just about every role defensively, dime back, nickel, outside corner, whatever it might be, and just grasping all of it in a complicated Vic Fangio defense right away. He's only gotten better in terms of just dominating and being on top of everything, but making it look just so effortless. And that is the way that Pat Surtain has been in this training camp. He was the star of last year's training camp, and it's just again looking even better in 2023. He had a play the other day where he was covering Cortland Sutton in the end zone, and his coverage was so tight that the ball thrown by Russell Wilson ends up whacking Surtain in the head because there was just nowhere for him to put the pass. And it just sort of goes to show you how much he's blanketed receivers, how easy it has been for him to, apply pressure to this offense. There's no better training for Russell Wilson, for some of these receivers than trying to target the, arguably best cornerback in football. And I think you're going to see the benefits of that going forward, for the offense. But, it was interesting. Sean Payton, having talked about Pat Surtain the other day, said, he's a guy when we're facing a cornerback like that, where we like to go at him, right? We want to run the ball at him early. We want to try to make him tackle, bring sort of the physicality to him. And Pat Surtain afterward kind of had a laugh about that, but that's another area where he has just gotten so much better. We saw a play the other day where a pass in the flat to the running back, he's there ready to lay a hit immediately. He's become more physical, stronger, not afraid at the point of contact to really get up and make a hit. And there's just zero weaknesses in his game, and it's been impressive to see. But in terms of the rest of the secondary, you have Justin Simmons, same way, coming off of a 2022 season in which he certainly should have made the Pro Bowl, led the NFL with 6 interceptions, despite missing 5 games due to injury. He's picked up where he left off last season, looks to be in for another big year. And you're starting to see some more of that depth develop. We've talked about it on the podcast a little bit already. Damari Mathis, notwithstanding the burn by Jerry Jeudy to end practice on Saturday, he's played really well. Faion Hicks is a guy, a 7th round pick in 2022, who I didn't really get on the field last year. And I think a lot of people, sort of hadn't been thinking much about after they drafted Riley Moss in the 3rd round, after Jaquan McMillan, an undrafted free agent, got a start in weeks 18 last year and played really well in the offseason. But Faion Hicks has been really good in training camp. So there's just a lot of guys in that secondary that are going to be the ones, that ultimately have to see the field. There's going to be injuries. It's just part of the nature. But I think this group is well equipped depth-wise, even more so than I think a lot of us thought going into this training camp. Another interesting piece of the defense, as we kind of end there, is the linebacker situation. Jonas Griffith became the 2nd season-ending injury, unfortunately, early last week when he suffered an ACL tear. He'll be out for the season after having missed the second half of last season with a foot injury. A big blow just in terms of experienced depth behind Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton. And also Jonas Griffith, big-time special teams presence, has been since he joined the Broncos in 2021. I think was going to be a key player for this new special teams coaching staff in multiple areas, probably all, core 4 special teams player. So that will be a loss. But what it also is, I guess on a silver lining side, is an opportunity for Drew Sanders, the 3rd round pick out of Arkansas, to have a quicker impact. He is a guy that is another player who is hard to miss in training camp. Not because he's always necessarily in the right spot. He's a rookie learning a complicated position in this defense, and it's going to take some time for him to get fully up to speed. But just in the way that he sort of effortlessly moves, across the field. We watch these linebacker drills up close to start practice. They're weaving their way through, through tackling dummies. They're doing high need situations where they're just kind of doing mobility exercises and things like that. And just the way that Drew Sanders kind of coasts through some of that stuff, you can just tell that athletically he's a little bit different. Alex Singleton, the starting linebacker, he said as much about Sanders, saying, man, he just has some stuff physically that's different. We saw some of it in a play in practice on Saturday. And of course, these are non-contact practices. The Broncos on Saturday weren't even in full pads, shoulder pads, helmets, and shorts. And Drew Sanders comes up to make a stop on a kind of an end around play. And he's just there so quickly that, kind of before he can really stop himself, he has sort of, put the wide receiver in a chokehold, WWE style, and takes him down, really without even trying to do so. It was just another window into, I think, the athleticism he has, the quickness, and it's going to be really interesting to see the ways in which the Broncos use him, how quickly he can get up to speed in order to have a package maybe of 12 to 15 to 18 defensive snaps a game in which he's playing some inside linebacker, but he's also, being used on the edge. Really fascinated to see how Sean Payton and Vance Joseph are going to kind of put that package together for him. And here's what Sean Payton had to say just about Drew Sanders, his learning process, and also just, again, some of the physical tools that he has.
Good. There's a learning curve, and yet, man, you see physicality, you see speed, his stature, his length, all of those things. He's going to be someone that does a lot of things for us. We see him certainly getting reps in the kicking game. I've been encouraged.
Of course, the injury news for the Broncos has not been all negative. There's a huge positive, and that is the fact that Javonte Williams, the third-year running back, continues to progress positively in his return from a major knee injury last October that included an ACL tear and other ligament damage. He continues to just really show that he is going to be a guy that is not only ready for the start of the season, but is going to be a major impact player on this offense. And that is, again, a little bit unbelievable for where a lot of us, Javonte Williams himself, thought that he might be in early August, shortly after he had that injury. And Sean Payton talked a little bit about, the surprise factor of Javonte Williams reaching this point the way that he has.
Back in the spring when we visited and we talked about him, I think all of you rightfully so, were a little surprised to hear that he might be on time, not on PUP. We still have to be mindful of his reps and understand that, an ACL recovery is X amount of time, and then they tell you it continues to heal into year 2. So we're doing a good job of working him through the scripts and the practice plans, and then being patient with what we're asking him to do. But I've been pleased to see him out here and not having to miss, a week or two. And that was to his credit. The offseason he's had, some guys recover quicker from that injury than others. And fortunately for us, he's doing a good job doing that.
There was a play in practice last week that I think really exemplified, that next step for Javonte Williams. He was in a route as a wide receiver with Russell Wilson on the field. It turned into a scramble drill. So obviously in that situation, as a running back, as a receiver, you are now sort of responsible for shaking your defender, for finding a way to present yourself as a target. And Williams was going up the left sideline, just saw out of his periphery that Russell Wilson was moving, stopped on a dime, made sort of a slant in cut toward the middle, a little bit back toward the middle of the field, got himself open, caught the ball, planted his knee, turned back up the sideline, And it just sort of, again, really showed you all within, just this split second of him, kind of cutting, moving, just being in this athlete in the way that he is as a receiver, that he showed last year before he got hurt that he could do. And it turns into a big play. And it's moments like that where you say, okay, those are the things that could really test you in a game physically. And he's out here doing it without a lot of thought to it. Without any sort of ill effects, as Sean Payton said, it's a credit to him that he has not needed, more than the built-in day off here and there that they're giving him as part of just his recovery. And again, Javonte Williams would probably be doing even more, he has said, if it wasn't for this medical staff kind of laying out the blueprint of what the recovery needs to look like. It's just huge. I mean, this is a team that is going to be, a power running team. This is going to be a team that I think is going to lead running the ball first. Sean Payton has already said that needs to be their DNA. It's going to make life much easier for Russell Wilson if they can effectively be a team that brings that fight from the ground first, that isn't trailing in games, can run the clock, can own the clock a little bit more than they did last year, or a lot more than they did last year. And Javonte Williams is going to be a huge part of that. Sean Payton has always used receiver or running backs in a way in which they're not just out here for kind of flares and check downs. He wants these receivers to be guys who run routes deep in the middle of the field. And Javonte Williams is not Alvin Kamara in that regard, but I think he's a guy that has sort of the talent and the hands, and is improving as a route runner to where he's going to be able to create some mismatches in that way. So again, he continues to progress positively in that direction, and we're going to see him at some point in this preseason. Sean Payton has said probably won't. It sounded like it's not going to be Friday night for Javonte Williams, maybe the following week against the 49ers. So let's kind of close this talking about some of the things we are expecting to see against the Cardinals, or what we hope to see against the Cardinals on Friday night. One of those is Sean Payton says, look, our starters are going to play. That includes Russell Wilson. So we think we'll get to see number 3 in action in Arizona. And I think the thing that you want to see that with that, beyond health, everything for the Broncos, obviously in this preseason, you want to stay healthy and not suffer any more of these, season-ending injuries that you've already had to this point. But I think with Russell Wilson, it's just playing with this new offensive line in front of you. Getting a chance to gel with that group a little bit in a game-like setting is going to be important. They're not going to scheme for the Cardinals in a major way. Sean Payton said really just one day spent on their personnel. It's going to be relatively vanilla in terms of what they do offensively, but just the comfort with that group, the chance to get back out there. A lot of this is getting the bad taste of 2022 out of their mouths. But specifically with Russell Wilson, it's like how quickly, how efficiently do you get the operation going? How quickly are we getting these play calls in the huddle? How quickly are we getting the line of scrimmage? Do we have the chance to check into some different things that we need? That has been an emphasis for Sean Payton. Tempo is huge in this offense, not necessarily just from a let's hurry up and go and get the snap off perspective, but hey, let's hurry and get to the line, make the checks that we need, get everybody lined up in the right way. And that's some of the stuff that I will be watching for as Russell Wilson and the first team offense take the field. The other thing is we've already got some interesting position battles brewing. I spoke a little bit about Javonte Williams. Samaje Perine, obviously his spot as the number 2 running back is secure, but who's getting on the roster outside of that? You have 3 guys in Tony Jones Jr., Tyler Beatty, and the undrafted rookie Jaleel McLaughlin, who's been one of the standouts of camp. All 3 of those guys I would expect are going to get a lot of work against the Cardinals, and they are all playing right now for they're in a tight battle, I think, for a spot on this roster. Perhaps the Broncos keep 4 running backs. I think probably more likely, considering you have fullback Michael Burton, who will be in that backfield as well. Denver will probably only keep 3 true running backs. So this is that to me is the most interesting position battle that is going to take place on Friday night. Obviously, receiver, that's another one. I think this is a big game for Brandon Johnson, the second-year player who was an undrafted rookie last year, who would have made the team out of camp had it not been for an injury, ultimately got back onto the team, had a touchdown against the Panthers, had 6 catches. over the last few games of the season, but he has had a great camp. And with Tim Patrick hurt, I think has a real chance to be the number 3 leading wide receiver in this offense. But really eager to see what he looks like in that game setting as he continues to grow as a player. So those are, I think, the main things that I'm watching for. And as we kind of wrap this up and close, looking back to the beginning of this, can they avoid these pre-snap penalties? Can they have a clean operation? I think after the last 2 days of practice this week and then going into the first 3 practices or so of next week, that is going to be a strong emphasis for Sean Payton. He'll be looking for not a perfect game, but a far cleaner game. So let us know what are some of the things that you guys are going to be looking for in Friday's game. Comment whether it's in the comments of the YouTube channel or on Twitter at Nick Kosmider. Let us know what you think, what you guys are looking for, and we will be back after the game with a breakdown of everything we saw. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.